In the film Ghost Ship, a group of salvage hunters of a tugboat discover a phantom ocean liner, a derelict vessel named the Antonia Graza that disappeared back in 1962. However, as the movie progresses, we soon learn that the Antonia Graza disappeared as something evil that happened by an evil spirit by the name of Jack Freeman. I will be doing more about this soon of this movie and the ship, the Antonia Graza. But what if I told you there was another ship that appeared in this film, but though very briefly, this video will be solely on her. What was the ship that appeared in this film? The SS Lorelei. The Lorelei only appeared in 2 photographs. However, from what we can see, we can easily tell some details about her. I will be getting into more of that, and how Jack Freeman was able to fool the passengers and crew of the Antonia Graza, and how he killed the passengers and crew of the Lorelei. This is the origin and legend of the Lorelei. As I said before, Lorelei was only seen in 2 photographs of the film. I'm really sad that they didn't give her a flashback, so we would know more about what really happened on the Lorelei. However, we're only left to speculate what happened on the Lorelei. But with some finishing touches and deals of my own, I have decided what really happened on board the Lorelei. But first, we must do the most important thing: her design. Now, right off the bat, Lorelei is a ship that I've never actually seen before, and that's because of one specific purpose. She's not actually based off an actual type of ship. Yeah, she's an ocean liner, but right off the bat, we can easily tell that she is German, because Lorelei is a slate rock in German. So it's safe to say that the ship was indeed German. However, looking at her, you can tell something very noticeable in her design. If you can see, she appears to be slanting in her design, as if like a banana in shape. In the only other photo of the Lorelei, right next to the Antonia Graza, we can see even more details. If you can see here, you can clearly see that the ship is slanting, as if she is bending like a banana, which is safe to assume that her overall design was simply that of a kind of like a U shape, the way she is designed. And the middle was solely uncentered, however her ends were curved. A very, 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 very unique design for a ship, and that was the Lorelei. Like the other ship that appeared in the film, the Antonia Graza, the Lorelei had only one funnel. However, looking at the funnel more closely, you can easily see that the Lorelei's funnel is much closer to her bow than at her stern. In fact, it doesn't even look like it's even in the middle of the ship, as most single funnel ships would be. However, and I think this is based off one particular ship. One ship that had this very much design. The SS Pasteur. If you look at the Lorelei and look at Pasteur, they both have single funnels. However, Pasteur's funnel is more closer to her bow than at the stern. This is the same thing with the Lorelei. And also, we can easily tell in this photograph that the funnel was probably painted red. As you can see, a slightly tint of red in the funnel, even though the picture's in black and white, and a white stripe through it. So it's safe to say that that Lorelei's funnel color was red and white. So her funnel color was red and white to begin with. And then, looking closely at her, we can see that her wheelhouse looks very much like a similar looking ship, the Antonia Graza. And what was the Antonia Graza based off of? The Italian ocean liner Andrea Doria. If we look at her wheelhouse, and if we look at the wheelhouse on board Lorelei, they look very similar to each other. And it's safe to assume that, judging by their looks, Lorelei is probably the same size and length as the Andrea Doria. I'll be getting more into that later. However, if we look more closely, she even has the same kind of like bow-like pro design, like a knife slicing through the waves, a curved edge. Very popular on liners these days. That's the same thing with Lorelei. You can easily see that. And Lorelei seems to have some kind of crest, or some kind of golden-like crest, I guess, on the front of her prow, like most elegants did back then, And also, she has a golden line along her side, right here. You can't see very well in this picture. But if you look more closely in this picture, you can clearly see the line that goes from right here all the way down to the ship. And some of Lorelei's design was probably based off the SS Stockholm. Look at Stockholm's masts. Look at the Lorelei's masts. They're very similar. Even if you look at this picture, she has two masts. One in the bow, one at the stern. Lorelei's Promenade Deck, seen right here, is very similar to that of the infamous Empress of Ireland. Just looking at her, you can clearly see the similarities between the two ships. Also, Lorelei has the same stern design as Lusitania. Take your hints right here. When you see the stern section, it is not like extended. It's kind of like the Antonia Graza as a whole, but different. Which means there is limited space on the poop deck. That same thing happened to Lusitania. You can even see clearly in this picture. It seems like, even though with the very curved design of Lorelei, you can see that the stern has not had that really much room on the poop deck, which is the very back section of the ship. Even in this picture, we can see Empress of Ireland similarities. The wheelhouse, which is kind of like the same with the Andrea Doria as well, and her promenade decks. Now, what do you guys think? Is it because the ship is sinking that the ship is have a curved design? Because you look at it, it's kind of like a U when you look at it. Or is there something more into Lorelei's design, if she is actually curved? I am making this video as if you guys want to make a model or drawing of Lorelei. Here's your proof to do an absolute drawing of her. But remember, her funnel is more closer to her bow, not the stern. It's not in the middle of the ship, because if it was in the middle of the ship, Lorelei's funnel would be right here, not over here. And her masts, well, I've already explained that they look like the Stockholms. And she is very narrow compared to that of the Andrea Doria. The Antonia Graza. Well, the Andrea Doria too, because the Andrea Doria was basically the Antonia Graza in the film. So basically, you can easily tell the narrowest and kind of like streamlined design as in the Antonia Graza. However, there's one thing that we don't understand about the whole story of Lorelei. What happened to her, and what did Jack Freeman do to those passengers and crew that were on the Lorelei? Well, due to what we know so far from the film, we can piece together what happened on the Lorelei. Lorelei was a 697-foot ocean liner, and the proudest of her time. Built in 1957, Lorelei could take up to 30,000 passengers each year, and had a top speed of 23 knots. As you can obviously tell, Lorelei was an ocean liner. However, she was put on cruise service to the Caribbean and South America in 1961. The next year, she would disappear, along with 723 passengers and 300 crew members. However, we can finally piece together what could have happened on the Lorelei. Please paste down in the comments if you believe my theory. Now, this is what I think happened on the Lorelei. As we found in the film, Jack Freeman is not actually an actual human. He is an evil spirit sent to collect souls. So what did he do? He probably went aboard the Lorelei, and noticing that there was gold on board the Lorelei, as is claimed in the film, the Antonia Graza's gold was actually from the Lorelei. So, it is safe to say that Jack Freeman came across the gold Lorelei. With this, he hatched an evil plan. He was going to get the passengers and the crew. He was going to get the crew and the passengers for his souls. However, he needed half of the crew at the Lorelei to do it. Hence, this is similar to what he did in the Antonia Graza, but that's for another video. For the day of the incident, Jack Freeman chose May 19th of 1962, as Lorelei was nearing the end of her voyage. Knowing that she would reach the end of her voyage, he knew he had to do something very fast, and so he did something evil. The night before, he ordered half of the crew members to kill the passengers of the Lorelei and into the early morning. For this, he wanted no evidence or any witnesses to what had happened. However, something must have happened, because when we see the Lorelei in literally 5 seconds of film, she is listening as if she is sinking. So so what I think happened was that while during the whole massacre scene where the crew was trying to kill the passengers, Jack Freeman sabotaged the boiler room of Lorelei, causing an explosion that ripped through her hull and 3/4 of her bow section. This also caused water to enter her near-empty fuel tanks, and the fuel tanks on the port side were empty, causing a severe list. However, as we do know, Lorelei did send a distress call, which was received by the Antonia Graza. So it is safe to say that either the captain or some of the crew member was on board and was still alive and had given out a distress message. It is likely that he was killed, or he or she was killed by either Freeman himself or one of the crew members that had gone insane. The explosion would have killed any other passengers and crew still alive on the ship. However, for some reason, Lorelei didn't sink right away. She just listed severely. And then when the Antonia Graza arrived, they were witness to a horrifying scene as the Lorelei was slowly sinking. So, Captain Santos of the Antonia Graza sent a lifeboat to see what was going on, to search of any survivors. However, we can clearly see in this photo that the lines on Lorelei are down, and none of her lifeboats were there. So, Jack Freeman would have done the obvious. He would have cut the lifeboats and sent them adrift, saying that the passengers had left, passengers and crew have already left the ship. However, they had drifted apart, which would the captain of the Graza would explain why he only found one passenger, Jack Freeman. And due to him being a physical spirit, Jack Freeman could have also have not let water reach the cargo hold where the gold was kept. So the gold would have been transferred from Lorelei to the Antonia Graza, and Jack Freeman was taken aboard. And so the Lorelei sank beneath the waves, due to a horrifying massacre and one evil spirit. 2 days later, the Antonia Graza, the ship that had discovered the Lorelei and her sole survivor, also went missing. However, that's a story for another day. And here's a challenge I sent to you folks out there. Try to see if you can actually build a model or drawing of the Lorelei, as you can see here in this photo. And please send a link to me of the video that you have done of your description of Lorelei. And if so, do your own story of Lorelei. How did Jack Freeman was able to kill the passengers and crew? Please let me know down in the comments. And so, I'm sending you off with a challenge. Try to see if you can either draw or build a model, virtual sailor or in a physical, of the Lorelei. The challenge has begun. As for the Antonia Graza, well, that's a story for another day. Also, Lorelei's sinking was probably taken off of the SS Mariposa. Mariposa was a ship that sank in the late 1800s to early 1900s. This photo could be easily been taken for the Lorelei. Well, the challenge has begun. Lorelei could be a ship of pure evil. Build a model of her and send me the link if you want to participate in the competition. And as for the Antonia Graza, that's a story for another day. And as for the Lorelei, probably the most mysterious ship in ghost ship movie history, what really happened that day would be never known.